probably going to be a rather short gathering, but here we are.
Boys,
At
come be part of the circle.
2:39 p.m. on this day 4 years ago, the Tohoku earthquake spawned a tidal wave that killed over 15,000 people and decimated cities and villages and dwellings along the Japanese coast for miles and miles. The recovery effort is still going on in some places, but the physical damage from the wave was not the worst part of that happening. When the tsunami drowned out the plant's generators and its ability to hold its own cooling and wrecked the containments, and that over the next several days there were hydrogen explosions and projectile vomiting of gases up directly into the upper atmosphere from some of these explosions, and the resulting clouds of radioactive material spread around the world within a matter of days. Only 8 days after the disaster began, there were cesium radionuclides identified in Brazil, on the mountainsides in Brazil. Excuse me. The resulting xenon cloud from the explosion of the plant covered the entire west coast for a period of weeks. And during at least a portion of that time in Seattle, the atmosphere was measured at such a level that people were projected to be breathing in 4 to 9 hot particles a day for 2-3 weeks straight. None of this, of course, has been admitted to in any significant way by the EPA or the NRC. The reports that you can get are, of course, couched in very murky language and very technical terms. But if you'll take a look at websites like Fair Winds Advocates or Fair Winds Energy Advocates, they're an educational outfit headed by a nuclear engineer who retired from nuclear engineering after 40 years when he realized that the Fukushima disaster proved there is no such thing as safe nuclear energy. And he's documented all this very effectively. His name's Arnie Gunderson. Here, directly after the disaster, we formed a group called No Nukes Northwest. From that, we now have radcast.org, which is a monitoring group, whereby we have a variety of people who are doing civilian monitoring. And the good news here is that since the initial aerial admissions, the air readings here in Portland have been fairly good. But the kinds of readings that we can do easily, that people can do to monitor the situation, don't cover the whole story. Alpha radiation is the quote-unquote weakest form of radiation. It can't get through a sheet of paper, but your standard detector, your handheld detector, can't actually detect it. As such, that radiation, or those radionuclides can be anywhere. You have, for example, plutonium, which is actually a gamma and an alpha emitter. So you have multi-spectrums that people just don't test for. And we don't really know what it's done to our environment. What we do know is that in this period of time, although it's very difficult to be specific because of the way the statistics are run, there is a high probability that we have had a spike in cancers, in heart defects and heart attack deaths, and in other opportunistic illnesses that take advantage of a weakened immune system due to radioactive exposures. Thankfully, here in Portland, that appears to have been at a minimum, but that does not talk about some of the other places in the nation which have received some tremendous depositions over time during this last 4 years. We have some monitoring programs that are running off the coast right now. Most notable is the one in Woods Hole. It is not what a lot of us consider to be an effective program, but there is somebody out there who's looking, and so far they say that what they measure in the water is not to worry about. But we don't worry about what's in the ocean water. We don't drink it. What we worry about is what the fish in the ocean water internalize and what we eat. And that's a whole different ball of wax. The science that the regular people have is not caught up to the situation. And that's why RADCAST exists and other organizations like it. And we are looking for your support in order to open up that can of worms for more people so that they have a starting point. Unfortunately, this problem will not be ameliorated in a reasonable time frame. The world governments that need to come together to address a problem of this magnitude have been allowed to be pushed out by TEPCO, the Japanese company that runs that plant and most of the power in Japan. Unfortunately, it has been alleged in convincing fashion that a lot of what's happening in their government right now around the nuclear thing is heavily influenced by the Yakuza, organized crime in Japan. And so there's already problems with getting into Japan to do something about a problem like this. You have that additional layer of separation where there's a lot of people who don't want any transparency. And so what we're left with is this continuing building problem of radiation that is being washed into the ocean on a daily basis over time that is getting worse as we go, not better. The rates are increasing. The rates of the readings of the water that is coming out is increasing. And there's really not much we can do. We've noticed, and although the marine biologists and such have not dared to make the connection, many people have noticed that there is a mysterious coincidence between the arrival of the wave of radiation from Fukushima that did arrive here and the sudden emergence of mass bird deaths and starving sea lions and other animals that appear not to be able to find food fish. And that could very well be a breakdown of the plankton cycle. It's hard to know because the sources that should be approaching this frankly are probably more interested in continuity of government than health of citizens. And this is our dilemma. We stand at the edge of the extinction, perhaps, of all life in the Pacific Ocean and maybe eventually the planet. And that's why this event has been entitled a Requiem for the Pacific Ocean, because we don't have any way to stop this. And it will continue. And whether it's in 5 years or 10 years or 100 years, the food chains that support us are going to break because of this and many other factors that we have allowed to exist. There's a tendency among many to allow the pain to induce anger and unreasoning action. But at this time, more than ever, it is important to be cogent and thoughtful and understand our situation and act like we know what we're doing for once. And that is, we're saying goodbye, and we need to make that part of our lives every day now. The world as we know it won't be this way for long. It just can't be this way for long. So as you go out into the day, and we'll all have a chance to say something after I'm done, but as you go out into the day, I'd like to invite you to marvel at the things we have built along with the things we have lost and will lose, to remark upon the simple pleasures of your day that will no longer obtain soon. Understand that this is inevitable and part of the cycle of what we must go through as a species, and that we must accept while we fight to ameliorate the suffering that will be attendant. I'm not a particularly religious man, but if I were to believe that there was a prayer that could change this, I would say it. If there was an action that I could take that would reverse this, I would do it. If you could convince me that setting myself in fire right over there would change this, I would do it right now. But there's no way to take this back. We must learn to live with it. And so I invite you to mourn and to celebrate all the things that have been and will pass on this, the 4th anniversary of perhaps the greatest disaster that ever faced humanity. If anyone has anything to say, please feel free.
We brought a letter. Thank you. We brought a letter to take down to the Japanese council today to express our regret about the world's greatest industrial disaster to ever happen, and about how the Japanese government is conducting themselves regarding this event that we're here gathered for today. So we have a letter, and I think there's going to be an opportunity for people to sign that, or anybody wants to go down there with us as we check down there sometime before 4 o'clock today. Depends on what goes on here. And we'll be taking that letter and going to the Japanese council. So anybody would like to participate in that, more than welcome. If anybody wants to steer up and get a louder announcement, I got a bullhorn here. And there's some other people that are coming up from Salem. They're going to be up here in a little bit. And some other people from Eugene. So later on in the afternoon, we anticipate more people to show up here. I know Mimi is down south. Who is unable to attend this event today.
Yeah, she's nearby. She's near.
Yeah. And so I have a website that's an aggregator called Nuclear Tracktown. And the reason we're calling Eugene Nuclear Tracktown is in the 80s, Eugene initiated the city ordinance making Eugene a nuclear-free zone. And it got a lot of press and some photographs and stuff. Now, the city fathers changed that, and now it's Tracktown, USA. So we're calling Eugene Nuclear Tracktown, USA. And it ties in with what went on here with the Trojan nuclear power plant and its defects. We're eating the defective nature of Trojan that was kept secret. The deal, the defects and everything are applicable to the meltdown in Fukushima. So not only are rates being screwed because of that secret deal that Enron bought and built the ratepayers for people with Portland General Electric, and EWEB down at Eugene own 10% of Trojan nuclear power plant. So we're eating the plutonium, and we're paying way more for our utilities because there's people reeking on the profits and withholding the information that should be made to the public regarding these nuclear power plant defects. Our short-term goal is to work to prevent the Japanese government from restarting any of those plants.
Who do we contact in the UN to ask for international mitigation of this problem?
I wouldn't contact anybody at the UN because the UN is owned lock, stock, and barrel by the multinational corporations, the same people that own the Japanese government and the American government. In fact, I am firmly convinced that not many, but a few of these multinational corporations have and possess their own nuclear weapons. I think Monsanto does. I think General Electric does. I think the Carlyle Group does, who owns EG&G. The people developed all of the sophisticated nuclear detection devices and manufacture all the fusing systems for nuclear weapons. Maybe you're familiar with that.
Somehow, though, we have to pull together international oversight of Fukushima. That's just what needs to happen. And I don't know how that's going to happen, but that's what we need to do.
Well, I just don't see that happen in the near term. The situation that could deteriorate, which it naturally will. Those reactors are going to keep breaking down because of the salt air and the water and the heat generated. They're dumping water, salt water, into those reactor vessels now as we speak. There's a river running through it. Technically, there is nothing that can be done at this time.
We can do
What has to be done is by individuals mitigating their own effects of being exposed to the radiation. That's my opinion.
Anybody else?
Hey, I'm Katie. I'm here with I'm with a group called Portland Animal Welfare Advocates. Sorry, I can't hear. I just came because I am tired of hearing that there's no harmful effects of Fukushima, and I'm just glad to be around people who also know the truth. And I also I was at Newport maybe 2 months ago, and I saw on 3 different beaches probably 25 birds washed up on the shore, and other people have told me that they've also seen birds in that area and in Depot Bay, and so yeah, that's why I'm here. I'm glad that you're all here too.
Good. Oh.
What?
Production's been coming to this.
So, I didn't prepare any words. I'm here because I care about the natural world and the ocean. Life comes from the ocean. We all come from the ocean. This is the first step in anything we're doing, is that we gather together and talk about it. And I wish that instead of 20, we had 20,000, but people still are prioritizing everything but this. And I'm not sure how to break through. I think the cynical part of my nature thinks that it has to get a lot worse before people start to wake up. I brought my children here just so that they could see that there are some people who are paying attention, to recognize that this is a really big event. My little one here is 5, so this meltdown
Face the proof of this.
This meltdown was 4 years ago, so almost his entire life this has been exposed. So yeah, so I just wanted to be here with them. That's all.
Hey, my group, right here.
Lots of kids here today, included in your comments.
Yeah.
There we came.
Guys, come to this side, Zeb. Come to this side.
Very concerned, even though it's been 4 years, nuclear never goes away. It just degrades into other nuclear materials, and they are freeing it into the environment. It's Armageddon's box, if you will. And we have a letter to the Japanese consulate today that we're going to deliver, and I have copies if people want it. We work with Eugene Peaceworks, and I also have that. So I'm Rick, by the way. Hi.
Can you read the letter out loud to us? Can you read the letter to us?
Sure. This is to the Honorable Consulate General Furusawa, Ambassador of Japan. And it's for Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Dear Consulate General Furusawa, today we are facing a new danger of world war, nuclear radiation and suffering. Your government continues to tell the Japanese people that they can overcome radiation, and you are raising the radiation contamination limits, as has the United States EPA. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe told the world community and the Olympic Committee that Japan has overcome the problems at Fukushima. The Japanese government and the world is now aware that far from containing the continuing crisis at Fukushima, your government is discussing the release of more radioactive water into the Pacific Ocean by Tokyo Electric Power Company, or TEPCO, or in the United States, General Electric. Is this what your government really means by containment of the Fukushima catastrophe? At the same time, we find there are a growing number of thyroid cancer surgeries, not just in Fukushima, but even in Sendai. Your government has refused to release the statistical information to the public about the number of surgeries. This continued effort to censor and cover up the serious health developments is in fact a continuation of the Japanese government's policy after the Fukushima nuclear plant meltdowns, when the government refused to publicize where the nuclear plumes were located, thereby allowing mothers and their families to actually walk directly into the radioactive plumes. Your government's effort to tell the Japanese and the people of the world that you can overcome and decontaminate Fukushima is not credible, yet you continue with the same sad story. Eugene Peaceworks and Lane County American Peace Test and many, many others worldwide are here today to let the American people and the Japanese people know that we do not accept these statements and policies. And we know that in fact there is a campaign of falsification and obfuscation going on. We call on you and your government to be held accountable. The cancers among the children and families of Fukushima continue to grow, and the refusal of the government to fully fund the evacuation of the children and families from Fukushima is another issue that concerns the effort that concerns us and the people throughout the world. We need action now to address these issues which continue to proliferate, and the effort to silence anti-nuke activists in Japan by arrests and repression, along with your recent passage of secrecy law, will not silence those who are putting truth to power. We also oppose the continued effort to remilitarize Japan and Asia. This again will only benefit the war profiteers in Japan and around the world. Funding should be going to help the people of Fukushima and Japan, who continue to suffer the effects of Fukushima. And thus we respectfully request open and honest dialogue by Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe with the world on Japan transitioning from the further use and effects of nuclear power and its materials, and the immediate diversion of TEPCO's nuclear wastewaters away from the world's Pacific Ocean. Sincerely, David Zupan, President for Eugene Peaceworks Board, and Rick Gold for Lane County American Peace Test, Eugene, Oregon. And I have copies for people who would like copies of the
Is
word.
that up online as like a credo
It is.
petition for people to sign?
Yes,
Okay.
you can pass them around. Well, unless anybody else has something to say, that kind of concludes this portion of today's activity.
Would you like
These
flyers?
guys have come up and want to organize something to the Japanese conference. Feel free.
Can I make a suggestion?
Well, you guys can organize that because I'm
Can
not
we
part
go
of that.
around and just people mention their names and who they are so I know who came today? That would be nice. Do you mind?
My name is Joe Walsh. I'm an activist here. Everything that we do, including trying to get police accountability, trying to get equality, trying to get good wages, all of that is not as important as this. Because this caused me to look at my grandchildren and apologize.
My children.
Because they're the ones that are going to pick this up, not me. And I look around and I see some young people here. The young people are going to inherit this, and this is what we left them. Really sad. So I'm glad you're here. I'll send a letter and I'll make a phone call. I'll do all of that. And we have to continue to fight in our own ways. So we have to do it every day, unfortunately. Just keep doing it. And don't get discouraged. If you get discouraged, look out at the window and watch a bird fly and then go back to work. Thank you.
My name is Richard Wood, and I'm fairly new to Portland, been here about 4 years. Every one of us comes from a different knowledge, a different place in what this nuclear means to us, but we all arrive at the same understanding, that this is bad. This is bad beyond belief. The reason I use the nuclear conversation is exactly what he said. This is pinnacle pollution. This is like the great white shark of the ocean. This is the nastiest stuff we can release on the planet, and it has been since we conceived of it. And we don't know what to do about it. I worked in this industry. I was an insider. I know the instruments they use to measure this stuff. I know the science, the physics, the chemistry, and we are not told the truth. And it would be called a lie if you understood why we're not told the truth, but it's information. They tell us about cesium, a couple of isotopes of cesium. Well, one of those reactors had over 10% plutonium in it. That was reactor number 3 that had the largest explosion, and that explosion was a reactor vessel overpressurization, which takes 4,000 to 5,000 pounds of internal pressure to blow up like it did. As soon as the air hit that fuel, it continued its combustion. So what you see in that reactor number 3 is the worst of the worst. When you hear about buckyballs, those are from the spent fuel pools burning and from reactor number 3. It's the physics of plutonium and how it interacts with the chemicals and reactions around it, yet you never hear about this plutonium, the deadliest substance known to man on the earth. If I had it in my hand, it'd be enough to kill this country. That's how serious deadly this stuff is, and people don't understand. So I thank y'all for coming out and being passionate about this. I feel what you feel. I was on the coast when they were talking about dead sea urchins up in Washington. You go to my Facebook page, Richard Wood, you'll see photos, and I sent a letter to UCS saying I found these on the Oregon coast almost 6 months before they said, oh, this is bigger. So this is friggin' huge. This is the coast of our country. The challenge is, how do you prove the science? And that's what I kind of work to do, because I think if they give me that window, if they give me some data, we can prove, because it's science. It's how this stuff works, and it's ungodly what they're doing to us with it. So thank you all for being passionate, for being willing to talk, and stepping up like this. There's so few of us. In Facebook, we're talking to ourselves, and we all get it. But how to get outside of that Facebook thing? So there's lots of groups. Find a large organization. Even 350.org, if you support them, fight their nuclear stance, because it's wrong. But they're still doing the right thing and the energy field. But if you can understand nuclear pollution and the way the plumes flow and the way the plumes flow underground, 45 years ago, I witnessed a survey done by Exxon Production Research of groundwater across the United States, federally funded by the United States Geological Survey. My instruments were measuring the contaminants in groundwater, drilled up and pumped up from across the United States and into parts of Canada. This work was done by Exxon Production Research in Houston, Texas. I serviced an instrument, optical emission spectrometer, that they use to find these elements and make their reports and figure out the geology. And inside this was maps of pollution from Hanford. The Hanford plumes come off of both sides of that mountain. Fact. It's just the way that the underground aquifers work. The Rocky Mountain Arsenal. 45 years ago, we knew this. 45 years ago, they were talking about burning chemicals here. There was very little conversation about the nuclear waste stored at that site. Yet working among these scientists, again, it was I go in for 2 weeks, I work, I leave, I go to the next facility, wherever it is. These gentlemen know about this conversation. They know what else was in their reports that their science, their instruments, their machines told them, but they can't report them. They're not allowed to report them. There's international treaties that say why this is done, and then there's corporate avarice. And that's the biggest problem we've got right now, is corporations think they know better than the general people do in this planet. So we have to fix this. My grandson is 1.5 years old now. Bless him. I'm an ex-Marine, Semper Fi. I love this fucking country. I don't love a lot of the people in it, but this doesn't suck as bad as people say it does. So I want to make this work. There's nothing to overthrow. The idea of anarchy or libertarianism or whatever else you want to bring, please bring that. Bring that with you. But understand what we've got has to work. This is our fucking government, period. And I'm rambling now, but thank you. I'm so disheartened by our scientists. They can't do this. I understand the business holds them back from doing it. There's all kinds of reasons, but do what you can. Correct the conversation. When somebody says there's no harm, they're wrong. One of the best places to go look, because it is documented, we never saw it, but look for Children of Chernobyl. That story is the truth of a nuclear accident, of the decades afterwards of cancers. Go look at Fallujah and look at the depleted uranium they use. That's an instant show of what in Fallujah the U.S. Armed Services used depleted uranium weapons.
Oh, right. Oh, I've seen it.
Instant show of what radioactivity does to the human genome. The babies there are distorted and messed up, beyond comprehension, beyond statistical norms. You can't make an excuse for it, yet they do, and we don't hear that. So, like the nuclear, this is the top of pollution. If you can understand how a nuclear plume works, you understand how any plume works. You understand that stack at that emissions plant, that chemical plant that's blowing off. That's not normal. That's crap in the air. There's an analyzer on that says something. Will you ever hear about it? No, you won't. Because the EPA is taking care of it. But people are trying to destroy the EPA because our government sucks, right? Well, we can't do what they do. I can't afford $1 million lab instrument to prove these folks wrong. I've got to be able to get in their door and use their own lab instruments against them. And I haven't been able to do that. But there's folks working at every angle on this. So pick one. Pick someplace you're comfortable and support them as you can. I don't have any money. I'm broke. But this is what I can do. That's all I got. Thank you for listening.
My name is Ann, and I come as a mother and a grandmother, and that feels like all children on the planet are my children, and all children on the planet are my grandchildren. And I have deep, deep, deep grief about all of the ways that we are killing the earth, and but I'm also a mystic, and I think it's very important for us as we fight these battles to keep driving into the heart of the good that we stand for, and to immerse ourselves in beauty and to bring a spiritual dimension to our work, because it's very easy when you're fighting dragons to get caught up in the anger and frustration and eventually hatred. And it is the good. I mean, when I think about all this stuff, I just want to scream my prayers from every cell of my body. calling out to all the forces of good and beauty in the universe, of which there are infinite creativity and beauty and resources that are available to us to tap into and draw from, to inspire us in the ways we reach out and keep us going in the work that we do. And my daughter is an activist, and we have done a lot of work in Africa, and I can say this, when you're working in the desert, when you're going against all evidence that what you're going to do is going to make a difference, that is your most powerful moment. That is the power. You're drawing on the powers of the universe when you keep doing what you're doing in faith and in connection to the good, in spite of all evidence that it's going to make a damn bit of difference. So keep it up and find your way. Thank you.
I'm Laura, and I'm a Hanford activist. And we have our own little potential Fukushima, at Hanford. The Columbia Generating Station has a Mach 2 reactor. They're projecting a big quake, we're due for one. And I was at OMSI Science Lab the other day, and Ken Niles and Dirk, I can't remember his name, from the Oregon Department of Energy were talking about Hanford. And I think what struck me is that if something drastically goes wrong there, there's not an infrastructure to take care of it. If the generators go away, if stuff stops working, you have waste there that, for lack of a better word, is alive. It needs to be churned, it needs to be monitored, it needs to be burped. It's waste that is not static. It's very dangerous, and if something happens there and we can't tend to that waste, let's say for an earthquake or whatever reason, then that's just a huge potential disaster. So I feel this is my place, and like you, I want to appreciate it and learn about it, and help others to learn about it. And what I can do now, what I feel my responsibility now, is the Superfund site on the Willamette River. We should all be engaged in that. It's right in our place. Hanford is right in our place. It's in our bioregion. I can't do a lot about Fukushima, but we can educate people about what's here and what needs to happen in Hanford is certainly one of those things. And so I'm grateful that you're here too. It's crazy making. I remember when Fukushima happened, I was on the PSU campus and it wasn't reflected anywhere, and it made me feel crazy. I knew, my body knew this was huge, and yet I didn't see it. I didn't see it reflected anywhere, and that was frightening. So I'm grateful that you're here and that you understand. Thank you.
By the way, Eugene Peaceworks were some of the instrumental people in helping to close down Trojan Nuclear Power Plant, and that is another Portland issue because they still have their in dry casks, and a big earthquake through this valley would
flood, earthquake,
Track the background of it.
Well, my name is Sammy. I already spoke, so I'll keep it brief. But I came with my children. I've lived in Portland for a few years, and I was in Eugene for many years before that. So Willamette Valley for about 12 years now, and I've been an advocate and an activist for various environmental issues for a long time, 350.org and other groups, and more recently with the economic issues like housing in this city, which is insane, and Portland Right to the City Coalition and things like that. And I'm just trying to, you only get so many heartbeats in your whole life, and I want to spend them doing something useful and speaking truth. And I'm a professor on the side, but that's not why I'm here.
Right.
And a father. I have two little boys here who brought animals. They were asked to bring an animal in the announcement. What did you bring? What kind of shark? Tell the cameras.
Tell me what kind of shark.
A great white shark.
Say it again.
A great white.
A great white. What kind of shark you got?
Dolphin.
Same?
Not a dolphin. It's not a shark.
It's not a shark. It's a dolphin. Thank you for being here.
Okay, thanks.
I'll tell you who my name is. I'm Joe Anybody, and I'm filming important things that are going on in the community. If you Google into YouTube or Google Joe Anybody Fukushima, you can see this video. If you have anything important to say, that you're doing public speakings or you want to get a message out, contact me. I'm trying to share the good information that's not in corporate media.
Great.
So Joe Anybody Fukushima, and you'll see this video. You can share it with other people.
Thanks for coming, Mike. We appreciate it.